Hello and welcome to the Tamp podcast. This is a podcast series where I will be speaking to an array of customers and guests of Tamp Coffee, sitting here discussing all sorts of topics from music and film to business to physical and mental health, sports and much, much more. So guys, stay tuned and please don't forget to subscribe, like and comment.
We'd been in a band that had got a lot of interest from major labels, and we got signed on a development deal, and we went and recorded 3 or 4 songs, but the result of it was that the record label offered our singer a record deal but not the band.
Living just enough
such a
for
tune.
the city.
Certainly in lockdown 1 it was like, okay, schools are shut, you're gonna have to homeschool them, and we just couldn't. Just 2 of us at home with 5 kids. We just went full feral, but also full into like, well, we're just gonna live. We're just gonna spend time together and, you know, play games and learn through living.
That's when Kitchen Disco came about, isn't it?
Yes, I mean that's another pivotal moment, kind of life-changing moment.
You're a pilot. When did that happen? How did that? Why? When? Where?
Flying is a very similar thing to me to what I get out of performing music, where you get into a state of doing, you get into a state of being completely present, because you can't do it thinking about other crap. There's too much going on, but it's also beautiful and it's surreal.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Tamp podcast. Today we have a very special guest. Today's guest is a coffee lover, a local, a long-time customer of Tamp. He is a musician, a producer, a songwriter, a founding member of The Feeling, a father of 5, and a pilot. Richard Jones, welcome to the Tamp podcast.
Nice. Pilot should have come first. But
I was going to say, have I missed anything there?
No, that's good. Did you got that off of Wikipedia?
Man, so what I do Wikipedia, I do ChatGPT, I do everything. Oh,
yeah.
Well, the pilot's from your Instagram.
Oh, yes. Well, yeah. There's a saying about if you're in a room with 100 people and there's one pilot, how will you find out? He'll tell you. And no, that's it's something I love.
Have I missed anything out in that intro?
I don't think so.
Amateur boxer.
Very amateur boxer. I love paddle tennis.
Paddle tennis.
That's a new one. I'm not enough to add it to my Insta handle yet, though.
You've been coming here since we opened.
Yeah.
What's your go-to coffee?
Long black.
Long black.
Still is. I go with a long black as my morning coffee, and an espresso after lunch. Generally, I kind of try and stick to 2 now. Beyond 2, because they're doubles, aren't they? When you get into 3, 4 a day, you start to get the jitters kick in.
Well, I've got single espresso cups here, which we don't use for customers. I've literally got about 4 or 6.
So you can stretch
only
it out.
For me, because I only ever drink a single shot, exactly, so I can stretch it out.
That's good. But no, I remember, when did you open here?
2014.
Yes, it's 10 years.
11
years this year. And I remember when you opened, it was like, finally, there's good coffee in Chiswick, because it was I think you were definitely the first.
We were,
and a staple of the community here. Love it. You
are so into coffee that you have actually invested in a mutual friend's coffee business. So let's give a shout out to Niall at 4 Leaf Coffee, who is currently set up just beside Turning Green Station in the garden centre. How did that come about then?
Well, so Niall, as you know, he's a good friend of yours as well, and he's been in this community for a long time. He became a good mate of mine over a decade ago, and as you know, he went through a bit of a tricky time, because he started 4 Leaf Coffee and built it up, and it was in a premises in Richmond, and business was going well, and then he had an issue with the landlord, had to move out. Bought this trailer and decided to set that up, and he struggled finding somewhere to put that. Eventually came to Wheelers over here, and Wheelers is an amazing garden centre, family run. We've been going there for 16 years now, so we know them all really well. We get our Christmas tree there every year, and he set up in there, but he kind of moved in November, which for an outdoor space selling coffee is pretty tough.
Tricky.
And so I think by kind of the end of March, he'd pretty much had it, and I just think he's a great guy. He's really good at what he does. I love the coffee he makes. He uses the Kelowna bean, which you'll know. And I just could see a future in it and wanted to help him out. Sophie's brother, who plays drums in her band, he's gone like deep coffee nerd. So when we travel around the world, he gets on the group and he's like, "This is the place."
Yeah.
And it's pretty fun because when you're touring, it's a really nice thing now. You know, you get to a stage where it's less about drinking and it's more about the fun exercise, whether that's paddle tennis or for Jack it's running, and then coffee.
Yeah.
And he'll find these places and you get these really interesting beans and the various level of sort of pretentious people working in the places. And so he's really passionate about it. And so he's going to bring a little bit of that to Four Leaf, getting involved in bringing some more interesting things. So it's something we felt was like fun to play with as a passion project, really,
Yeah.
for the coffee, and also to kind of help Niall out so that he can kind of focus on doing what he does well, which is being a great barista and running the place, rather than the kind of stresses of the business. Because it's a hard business to get into, especially around here. There's a lot of competition.
The competition around here is I've never seen anything like it. I mean, look, just on this little stretch here, before us, you've got the dog and coffee place. Then you've got us, 2. Then you've got Rosie's, which do coffee and cupcakes, 3. Then you've got the bakery across the road, 4. Then you've got Beehive, 5. I'm not really going to count the brunch place because it's not really coffee, but that's 5. And then
But
after
I can make you a coffee.
they can, but then after that you've got Arcane, that's 6.
It's nuts.
I mean, and this is like not even 200 meters.
Yeah,
It's
but
insane.
you were the first.
Yeah.
And the other thing is this is another reason that I wanted to get involved and invest in Niall's business, is that what is a coffee about? It's about 2 things. It's about the quality of what you're doing, and that's the biggest thing which you do here, which you put out really excellent coffee. And second, it's about the person. It's about the person making the coffee. And that's why you go there. And that's why even when there's 5 or 6 options, people will come to the same place because they know that's what they're going to get. The personable service and great coffee. And it's not actually not easy to do that.
No,
people underestimate that.
I've said this in previous podcasts. The hardest thing to achieve, and not just for a coffee shop, for anyone in gastronomy, hospitality, the hardest thing to achieve is consistency. To knock out the same time and time again. That's the hardest thing. You can go anywhere, you can knock out one fantastic coffee. But to do that all day, every year for 11 years, that's the hardest bit. But I think one of the edge that I have over my competitors is quite simply that before I opened this, I was a barista. The others weren't.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's my secret, basically.
Yeah, and you take that level of care and attention and pride in what it is you're serving. And it's completely consistent. And it's not something that happens by itself. That's the other thing.
No.
I've seen it. I was in where was I? I went to a water park with my kids the other day and asked for an espresso. That was a mistake. They had all the equipment. You see the sort of hammering some beans through a machine and then sticking it in the thing, and it came out with this sort of tarry, messy. You can get it wrong very easily.
Very easily. Very, very easily. So just to let you know, this podcast, what we like to tell is kind of personal journeys, personal stories. What I said in one of the intros that we gave, I described this as a little nugget of truth in a increasingly surreal world. So we'd like to kind of know your story. So I'd like to kind of ask you about your childhood, kind of where you grew up, what kind of a kid you were like, the path that led you to where you are now.
Going way back. Well, it was a cold and stormy morning on the 6th of April, 1979. I was born actually at home in a village called Forest Row.
I've got friends that live in Forest Row.
Do you?
Yeah.
We've never had that conversation before.
No, we haven't.
Really?
Wow. Yeah.
Well, you may be aware then that it's quite an unusual, quirky
Scientology?
place. So, well, when I was a teenager, so the context, my parents moved there in the 70s when they had my older brother, purely because of the reason that my grandfather lived there. they're pretty traditional in their ways. My mother was a hairdresser, my dad was a chef, and they sort of accidentally moved into this very, very quirky village. I was born in the house, and then grew up there and just went to the local school. But the thing about the village, there was actually a documentary made about it, which you can see a teenage, I think 14-year-old me in the doc. It was made about how many cults and strange religions there are surrounding this village. So around this village, which has a population of, I think about 3,000 max, there's over 35 different alternative religions cults, which vary from just your basic pagans. I used to see one of our neighbors used to walk around with a goat, feeding it, but eating the leaves off trees. Witches, to the big ones, Scientologists, the Mormon church, the biggest church of Mormon in the UK is in that area. The less kind of extreme but more sort of alternatives, the biggest Steiner school in the UK is in Forest Drive.
I'm a fan of Steiner.
Yeah, and that's not such a
Yeah.
That's not like, I wouldn't call that a cultish. It's more just alternative and arty.
Yeah.
But still sort of off the beaten track.
Yeah, quirky, different. Yeah.
And so I grew up amongst all of that. And there was actually a bit in the doc which me and my teenage friend Owen, who I lived opposite her in, because we knew they were filming up the street. So we got on our most gothic teenage clothes. I think I had a Slayer t-shirt.
Nice.
We had long hair, everything black, and kind of got in the back of the shot while they were doing it. Because what they were talking about was the street I grew up on is a road called Highfields. And according to the people that talk about these things, there was a ley line that ran straight down the middle of that street. And they were interviewing people on the street and talking about how many people who lived there, and I was born there, were creative. And it was almost everyone was an artist of some form or other. Personally, I don't really buy into that, but I think there's something about the influence of your surroundings and all the people around you, and growing up in a place where there's all this kind of alternative thinking and creativity definitely was definitely formative for me, and sort of started me on the path towards music.
Nice segue. I was about to ask, what were your first encounters with music? You mentioned Slayer briefly.
Yeah.
Nice, gotta love them. What were your first kind of, let's say, conscious memories of enjoying and being in touch with music?
I mean, I always felt music on a very like emotional level from as early as I can remember. I remember when I was probably 3 or 4 listening to my dad's vinyl, and he had all the Beatles records, which were a big influence on me, a lot of old Motown records. And so I remember sitting there with headphones on, specifically listening to Revolver by the Beatles, Round and Round, with Eleanor Rigby and Tomorrow Never Knows and Taxman, and these such varied, incredible music and songwriting. I didn't know what it was. I just knew it made me feel something. And the same with the Motown records, all the classics. He had those sort of collection records. That started it off, but I didn't actually get it properly into learning an instrument till I was a teenager. I think as a child I didn't really have access to it. My parents, I think they tried me on a nylon strung classical guitar, but I went to a teacher and it was like reading the dots trying to play Frere Jacques, and it just didn't connect with that emotional thing of music to me. It felt more hard work and mathematical, and also playing, it didn't sound very good because I didn't know what I was doing. But then a very life-changing moment really, when I was a teenager, I became obsessed with music. And that was the era of the early 90s, so it was coming out of I guess the sort of, rock metal stuff of the 80s into the early 90s.
So it's at the end of the kind of, I guess the 80s, 90s, we're talking Guns N' Roses, Pearl Jam, Metallica.
Exactly.
That kind of era.
That kind of thing, crossing into Nirvana, and then and the grunge stuff, and then my parents were quite religious, so that's where the death metal came in. I think there's always a link. If you're raised in a religious way, that you get really excited by a pentagram. Songs like South of Heaven.
But funnily, death metals, you compare it to metal today, it's actually very melodic.
Oh, it is, yeah, and very musical.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Like
incredible.
you listen to those 80s thrash bands. It's actually like classical music
Yeah,
almost.
I know, and like virtuoso playing.
Don't ask me
Uh,
why, but I was listening to Angra the other
oh,
day. I don't know,
really?
it just popped into my head. I'm going to listen. I listened to it. I'm like, this is like classical guitar, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I still love that kind of thing. I don't listen to it as much as I did then, but it was just kind of everything. It was all the music that was coming through, and then what the Britpop came and sort of opened up everyone's sort of appreciation for bands like the Beatles again. They kind of made that link back, and that's when I was about 14, and a lot of my friends who played guitar or other instruments were already pretty good by then. They were quite high on their grades, or they were already in bands, and I hadn't even started. But my mum, she found this teacher through some old lady whose hair she was cutting, who taught guitar. And the thing he did is he just taught me to play songs I liked by ear. So I went to see him, and he was like, "Okay, look, depends what you want to do in life, whether what you want out of music." And at that point, I didn't think I'd be a professional musician. I kind of thought that was too late. I thought if you wanted to be a musician, you'd have to have already be grade 8, and then you go to music college and blah blah blah. So it was purely coming at it from a point of view of passion. And he kind of just unlocked it for me because he just showed me how to play those songs, like, Guns N' Roses and Nirvana. And then it's just the 10,000 hours thing. You just sit there in your bedroom when you have time, because back then you don't have responsibilities, and you think about how much time you have as a teenager. And also we also didn't have devices. We didn't have mobile phones and social media. So we just got bored. We got very bored, and then used that time and energy putting it into something like that, which for me started on the guitar. And it just fit. It just locked in and it fit. And then the next stage in that was when I finished my GCSEs. Again, looking to what I was going to be doing at college, whether to do A levels, whatever. It wasn't, because I didn't do music. Music A level wasn't an option for me because I didn't do GCSE music. But by then, I'd started to get into bands and was out playing in pubs, things like this. And again, through my mother's, I've only just realised talking about it, it's a lot to do with who my mum's job as a hairdresser.
Curious, man. The stuff this brings up, like you said earlier
Yeah,
about your friend.
these
and their
things where
melody.
you're like, oh, I never really thought about it this way. But it was actually another old lady. She cut a lot of granny's hair in our village, whose
The
hair,
wisest.
yeah. But yes, but also, it's when you have a role like that, you spend a lot of time chatting to these people, and they ask you about what's going on. And obviously, she was talking about me looking for somewhere to go to college, and this lady had her granddaughter had just started at the Brit School, which was, I think, 2 years old at that point. Now, this is before any of us had the internet, so you didn't Google stuff. So how you'd find out about these things was
It was word of mouth.
word of mouth, yeah, or like you'd see an advert or something like that. But this very specific link meant that I have to find out her name actually, but the old lady, the client of my mum, she got a prospectus for us, and brought it home. I remember looking through it, and it was all media music courses. And we went up there and had a look, and I was just like, this is incredible. They had recording studios, they had rehearsal rooms. It was such an exciting idea. And the other key thing was that it's, as it still is today, is it's a state funded school. So it's non-fee paying. Because for me, that was not an option. Private school wasn't an option. So that meant it was possible. And then I went through the process of applying and auditioning she had to do. And I went along auditioning, not knowing how to read music, thinking that would mean I couldn't do it. But actually, what they were looking for there was potential. They weren't, if you were a virtuoso grade 8, they'd go and get a music scholarship at one of those colleges. That's where you should be. But at Brit, they look, and I think they still do, because I've been back a few times. They're looking for someone who maybe hasn't had an opportunity, because we had no industry links. We had no anyone. Even there weren't even instruments in my house until till I was older. So yeah, I got in, and it was life changing.
Would that be the moment where you realized music was going to be more than just a hobby?
That's when the dream began to, yeah, that possibility started to appear in my mind. I still, to be honest though, I think that it's only probably in the last maybe 10 years, bearing in mind I'm 46 now, so that's when I would have been a professional musician for 16 years. It's only the last 10 years I actually started to think maybe this isn't my job.
Oh, actually,
Because,
I'm quite good at this.
well, because I think you go in any, probably in any business really, but certainly in something like music, you kind of go year to year thinking, isn't it great I'm doing this, but maybe it's not going to carry on beyond this point. And what can I do to make that happen? And I think, yeah, only in the last decade have I accepted, oh no, this is what I do now. This is clearly it. So I don't think I was quite there yet when I got into Brit. I just thought I was just excited about the possibilities. And the nuts thing is, and life-changing thing is, on my first day there, I met Dan Sells. The second day we started a band together, and we're still in a band now. And eventually we went on to form The Feeling together with two other students who came up to Brit the next year. But yeah, I did a gig with him on the weekend. I mean, 16 years old, I met him in the foyer on the first day.
That's nice. That's
and we've just kind of gone on this journey, this like life-changing journey. But each step I can look back and go, well, it's through music that I met my wife, had our 5 kids. I mean, the concentric circles of what it meant for me and the people around me, my family, have been huge, and all kind of coming from those key moments. That first guitar teacher, and then getting into Brit. If I hadn't got into Brit, I probably wouldn't be doing this at all. That's where it all started, really.
It's interesting. It makes me think how important it is to how the decisions you make when you're younger are so important. And I seem to get so many of those wrong that I'm still here making coffee. But
yeah, but this is amazing. Like, this is a hugely this is you're living someone's dream.
Yeah, but
sure.
I took a long time. Like, I opened this in 2014. I was already in my 30s. I'm 43 now. Like, I feel I was a late starter. Definitely through my teens and my early 20s, I think I wasted a lot of time, is the truth. I dabbled in a lot of things, but I was definitely a late starter.
Maybe, but then all of those moments are formative and led you to here, right? And led you to where you are now. And I can pick out times, when I was in my 20s, I was working. I mean, we were jobbing musicians, playing gigs in bars and weddings for cash, living like the young ones, in a student flat for men. I mean, even when I met my wife, I was still living like that. And there's so many little paths on the journey, and definitely many, many mistakes were made, and there were many failures. I mean,
yeah.
multiple bands that I tried and put so much work into amounted to nothing.
Now, failure, I'm glad you brought that up, because this came up in one of the other episodes. And when we were speaking to a business coach, business specialist, business mentor, and we were saying how important it is to face failure and how you deal with it when you face it. That is likely to form potential success or not.
Mm.
And I think failure is fundamental. I'm still faced loads of them, still facing many of them.
Of course, me too. And I think that I don't know of anyone who's successful in any field that hasn't failed many, many times. Yeah. And it is, my experience of that in multiple ways in different projects is, I guess it's just, there's a slight tenacity where you kind of let go of it and just move on to the next thing. But also I've always taken, and I still do have like lots of things going on. And I find that quite healthy for everything. There was a period which came with the success when the feeling became so consuming that for nearly 10 years, I didn't do anything else. It was a full-time job. And for certainly like 6 of those years, it was incredibly intense, incredible experience. We were traveling the world and we were kind of having these dream experiences. But as many people will tell you who've been through that, you get pretty rinsed, because you want to say yes to these things because it's stuff you've always wanted to do. And when the offers come in to play in this country, play in that country, be interviewed, do that, you just say yes, yes, yes. But then eventually you get very depleted.
Yeah, you can burn out. I'm
yeah,
sure.
and it happens. Generally does happen to most people, or they, particularly if you then lean into drink or drugs or any of those things.
But they go hand in hand, don't they?
Mm.
Because if you are working so hard and playing so many gigs and doing so many interviews that you're exhausted, you turn to drink and booze and drugs.
Yeah, so it's self-medicating.
Exactly. It's kind of like a coping mechanism, right? Similar things in kitchens.
Yeah.
Top kitchens, so demanding, the pressure so intense. You're working 15-hour days, 6-7 days a week. You got to take something. How else do you do it?
Yeah. It's incredibly, you can see how, and many people that I work with have kind of got through it eventually by having to give it all up. It's like all or nothing. But to the point on failure, during this time of success, we only did this one thing. And actually I found it became not good because eventually we were too focused on trying to keep it being successful that we kind of couldn't work out what it was that was good about it anymore. We sort of slightly lost touch with that. And what was really healthy was actually starting to do other things again. Because when I started to do other projects again, some other musical projects, writing with other people and working with my wife in running her band and on her albums, then when I came back to do The Feeling, it was clearer what that was. And so all those other things that I'm doing, 9 out of 10 of them don't actually amount to success if you're quantifying that financially
But they helped give you what I'm going to interpret. I'm going to use the word perspective.
They do, yeah.
So you stepped out and back, and these other things gave you perspective to then see exactly what you were doing.
And feed that into each multiple thing. But then you only need one in a while to do well.
Yeah.
You just need one to kick off every now and then, and that carries you over. But I found for me, like focusing too hard on one thing is counterproductive. You start to kind of find it hard to see exactly what it is you're trying to do with it.
And the weight of expectation and pressure you put on that one thing can be detrimental as well.
Massively, especially if it's a creative endeavor. Because creativity, which I've learned through, again, experience and failure, when you come at it with any sense of fear, it doesn't work. Or any sense of trying to make something commercial. It's almost like you can smell it on it. And what I realized that kid who was listening to the Beatles records, why did I love that? It was like an instinct. It's an emotional response that we have as humans, right? And you need to feel that when you're making the thing. And that's what makes something that other people will feel. When you're making the thing and you're thinking, what's the kind of hooky melody that kids like today? Don't get me wrong, there are people who are good at that. But for me, it never worked. Those things were never successful. They were never the thing that connected with other people or became hit records or whatever, however you'd want to describe them.
There's a famous phrase, I forgot who said it, but it's art for the sake of art. For good art to be good art, it has to be made for the sake of art and not for the sake of commercial success.
That, for me, has been the thing that's worked the most. Not always. I've made music and records that I love and get everything from it that I need that have commercially flopped completely. But what I do know is when we've tried to make something commercial, I feel like even if it's successful commercially, you don't feel it, so it becomes something quite unpleasant. And you see that with some artists when they start to resent playing their hit record because they kind of don't feel it. And I feel very fortunate that that's never happened to Sophie or me. Both of us, we love playing our most popular songs because they genuinely mean something to us in that time in our life when we made them.
I've always wondered what it must be like for artists to have crowds requesting songs that they don't particularly want
I know.
to be recognized by.
I know, and I've seen it, experienced that, or when an artist won't play the song that everyone wants to hear for that reason, and I think that's really sad. Honestly, I think it's just something that's not happened to me. I get for some of them it's about artistic progression, and that's part of who they are as artists. That it's just like, that's the thing I did then, and this is the thing I did now. I can kind of see that. And there are certain artists like, Bob Dylan.
I was just about to say Bob Dylan,
who can do that because he's Bob Dylan.
But saying that, when I went to see him play, it was goddamn awful.
Well, that's the gamble for the audience.
It was awful.
It's the gamble for the audience, because you could get any version, and it could be one of the best gigs you've seen in your life, or it could be.
I was so excited. I was about 18, 19 years old. He was playing at the Wembley Arena, and I was like, oh, Bob Dylan, wow. And, we'd listen to all of his acoustic albums, like album after album, and we'd, sit there smoking weed to it, enjoying it. And he goes there, he had this electric guitar. He didn't pick up the acoustic guitar once, just kind of screaming into the mic with an electric guitar. And I was just like, nah.
This is the wrong Bob.
Yeah.
I wanted the other Bob. But with him, he's one of the examples where I would allow it, because he's so significant culturally, and the songwriting that he's sort of brought into the world, that I'm like, you know what, fair enough, do what you like, Bob. And people kind of also know that is what might happen. If you go and see him play, you could get any version of a set list. But for us mere mortals, and most artists, I think the saddest thing is what I described, is when you can kind of tell that it's just that they possibly never really liked that song. They just kind of got told to sing it, or told this is going to be a hit, and it was. And then it's like a sort of burden that they're kind of stuck with. But
it can happen, but sometimes I'm guessing it could work the other way, in that, well, not work the other way, but there could be benefits in the sense that perhaps that burden, that one hit, actually allowed them to continue their career.
Well, it likely would be the case, yeah. And that's why the audience get upset if they don't hear it, because that's what they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one, and it's not. I do understand it, but I feel genuinely feel really fortunate that I just don't feel like that about it. I really like playing the songs that have become popular, and I also come at the thing of, like, when you're putting on a gig, having that respect for the fact that the audience are essentially paying to be entertained. It's the same as when you make someone a coffee. It's a service. We're trying to provide a service for these people that we want them, and there's a connection that you get when you can see that they're enjoying it and they're singing with you, and there's a sort of feedback that becomes between you on stage and the audience that can be incredible. But I know from going to the gigs and being a fan, the same experience you're talking about, of when you go and you're just like, I love this artist, but I'm just really disappointed.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to do that.
I just want to go back a little bit again, because you mentioned when you first formed The Feeling, would you say you were 2 days into college or something?
That's when I first formed a band with Dan.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we had like at least 2 or 3 different versions of bands. The Feeling actually didn't come around really till we were like maybe about 22. So we'd left Brit. I'd gone to university. Went to Westminster Uni with Kieran and Paul, who were in the band, in Feeling, that is, pre The Feeling existing.
Yeah.
We were in a different band together, and we did the 3 years of uni, and in our last year, this was another sort of keystone moment for all of us. We'd been in a band that had got a lot of interest from major labels, and we got signed on a development deal, which meant they don't really do those anymore, but it meant they basically paid for us to go into a studio with a producer. And we went and worked with these brilliant producers who called Bacon and Cornby, who produced Finlay Quay's album.
I love Finlay Quay.
What a record. Yeah. Maverick Strike. And it was like a year, or maybe a year or so after that came out. So they were like really, really hot producers at that moment. So we were so excited to go in with them. And we went and recorded 3 or 4 songs, but the result of it was that the record label offered our singer a record deal, but not the band. because they just looked at the situation and went, actually, we can work with her and just make this a thing, and not sign the band. So we were kind of at a bit of a loss at that point, and it was actually Paul, our drummer. He saw an advert in the NME and it said, wanted covers band for ski season in the French Alps, play shows, free lift pass, free food, free accommodation. And we just were like, we just jumped, that sounds amazing. And we were suddenly at this moment of like, well, we don't have a singer anymore. We're still a band, but without a lead singer. So we completely blagged it. I mean, basically we called up the guy, put in the ad. He was like, right, so you got to be able to play 2 hours per show. So about an hour with a break, another hour. So you need to know 40 or 50 covers. It's all, that's the idea, that you're just, entertaining people. And we were like, yeah, no problem. At that point, we knew 4 covers. One was Living for the City, Stevie Wonder.
Yeah, great tune, man.
It's quite an unusual one when I think back too, like to being like, yeah, of all the songs to cover.
Do you know what that song? So it's a total segue here, but do you remember the film New Jack City?
Yeah.
Do you remember when they're sitting around the fire?
Yeah.
And they're doing a cappella. Living just enough.
Yeah, it's such a tune
for the city. Oh, it's amazing, man.
But what we did is we basically wrote a list of 40 songs we thought would be good.
Yeah.
Sent it to him and said, this is what we know. And he went, okay, great. Well, I'll come up and see you play just to check. So he came up to a rehearsal room. We played him those 3 songs and he was like, great, no problem. Can you just do me one more? And we were like, yeah, sure. And he pointed at the list and it was Walk Like an Egyptian, which was the only other song we knew on the entire list.
Oh, that was
lucky, fate, who knows? But we played the song and then got the gig, and then we had 2 weeks to learn enough songs. So we kind of learned enough to cover it. Went out there, and then we were doing 10 shows a week, 2 hours a show for 3 months, and that was where we really learned how to play. That was our proper,
and it's where you
formative
gel.
Yeah. And what happened as well was we didn't have a singer, so I actually said to Dan, who I always thought had the talent, you're going to have to do this because you're the only one who can do this. And he was a bit reticent at first, but then as soon as we got out, it was like Freddie Mercury people was born. And that was it. Yeah. And as the more time we spent there, we got bored of playing the songs we knew. So we learned more. And all of that information, and it all went in, whether it was like learning these brilliant songs or seeing the reaction of the crowd or stuff happening when we were playing and learning this dynamic of like working with an audience. It was completely formative. And then it was after that we got back, and then Dan started writing songs for his own voice. So he started writing songs and singing them. And that was really the beginnings of what became The Feeling.
And when was your breakthrough moment then? If that was your formative moment, when
the next kind of chapter of that really is that after we'd done this Alps trip, a couple of things happened. As a band, we kind of bonded in every sense, but also we got pretty quick at learning songs. We're all playing by ear, and I got a call with Paul, our drummer, to ask if we wanted to. It was from the manager of the old band we were doing. Called us up and said, "Look, I've been contacted by Polydor Records. They're looking to put a band around this new pop singer, Sophie Ellis-Bextor. She's put out an album, and we all knew Murder on the Dance Floor. That had already become
huge,
and Groove Jet. Those 2 songs had already become huge hits. So she had her first solo tour of the UK and Europe on sale, selling out, but didn't have a band. And her team wanted to put a band of younger musicians rather than what I am now, middle-aged man musicians. Because there was a lot of those around who had done a sterling job, but she was 22 at the time. Yeah. So just sort of for the, the feel and the look of the whole thing, they wanted to kind of find some. I think it was that thinking about it, and the fact that we were going to be cheap, so young cheap labor, and so Paul and me got got asked if we wanted to audition, and we were like, yeah, why not? And we just spent months playing together. And we went along to rehearsal room in King's Cross. We learned 2 or 3 of the songs. And I honestly think the reason we got the gig was 2 things. It was firstly because we'd just spent so much time playing, but also we've spent so much time playing together. So we turned up as a rhythm section, whereas pretty much everyone else was turning up individually. So immediately we made a sound that was locked in.
And that's one of the hardest things to achieve for a band, is to sound that completely in sync with each other.
Yeah, it's a pocket, isn't it?
Solid.
There's a pocket. There's being tight, but there's also a way that musicians, when they get into this pocket of groove together, where it just feels good.
Yeah.
And you think how many variations. It isn't just about playing in time. You know, if you put a computer on a click and make everything perfectly in time, it sounds soulless and dead. There's a million different, an infinite amount of variations of quite where you put the note, where the intensity is, you think in your fingers, like how hard or soft it is. And it just, for everyone, it's finding that feel. But if you've got a rhythm section, in my case, you know, with Paul and me, who still play together now, we don't even have to look at each other. It's a slight raise of an eyebrow, side eye, and I kind of know what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And he knows what I'm going to do.
And that's great, man. That's when
I
it just goes.
It's a special thing.
It's like a flow state, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, it is. When you get into that, and it feels incredibly. It just, you're not thinking. You've disconnected from the thinking part of your brain, and you're in the doing.
Just feeling.
Yeah, you're feeling, and you're doing. Feeling. Yeah, there you go. But so basically, we got that gig. And then went on tour with Sophie for the next year and a half. And that was an also incredibly life-changing moment, because Sophie and me ended up falling in love, and we're still together now.
Which is incredible. Which is I want to get into that later on. But let's stick with the music for now. I just want to ask you your bass influences. It came up. The only one that I recognized was Jaco Pastorius. Now,
well, yeah,
obviously, Weather Report. I mean,
I just think he is like he's like the Hendrix of the bass guitar. He did it in a way no one had heard before, and also in a wild, quite rock and roll but incredible musical sense.
He was bringing, dare I say, crossing rock and jazz.
Yeah, he was, and he was also just bringing like something no one knew to it. He was doing like Ginger Baker did in Cream, almost as something like no one's quite heard this before. And I'm a massive fan, but he's not an influence in the way that I play. It's not I'm just in awe of that.
Yeah,
and because it's how it makes me feel. But the actual way I play bass guitar, I'm much more influenced by. I realized over the years the biggest influence on me is Paul McCartney from the Beatles.
Yeah,
which goes back again to the listening to Revolver when I was 3 years old, round and round and round. His way of playing very melodic bass, that kind of their counter melodies to the song, is the way that I play, and it's also the way that I kind of like. It feels right to me.
Maybe you subconsciously ingrained that before you even studied the bass.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? That's what's in there. And it's also on that as well. It's another thing that I say to myself, but also to anyone who's kind of starting out, is that one thing that it took me a while to realize is actually finding the thing that I am good at and what is natural to me. And I delved into the fusion world in my teens because I was just inspired by seeing these like incredible virtuoso players, and it just isn't the way that I play. And so I'm never going to be that guy. So there's a point where I kind of realized, don't try and be something that isn't natural to you. Try and be the best thing that is. And that sort of melodic Paul McCartney indie rock style bass playing is just what comes naturally to me. So it's like, lean into that, be the best at that. And that's definitely worked for me, because There's always going to be people looking for the thing that is you.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people spend their life searching. Oh, well, actually, a lot of people don't search. A lot of people go through life without even looking, which also happens. We've got a bass player who comes here, he's a semi-regular. I'm trying to convince to come on the podcast and he refuses to, point blank. But I'm sure he would probably be one of your influences, which is John Paul Jones.
Oh God, yeah.
So
he is a I mean, they're one of the greatest bands
ever.
Undeniably. If not, I mean, they're up there for me with the Beatles in how significant they are musically. But yeah, he's obviously a very private man and
he's a lovely guy. He's been coming here for years and years.
I'm gonna be here every day now, just sitting in the corner waiting for him.
He comes here, has just a double espresso by itself.
That's it.
Yeah.
What a legend.
And he's really sweet. He's really, really sweet.
You never know. You could get the world exclusive, the only interview he's done in about 30 years, probably.
I think there's an argument to say for Led Zeppelin that I know, I don't want to take away from Black Sabbath, because I know there was a big gig and it sounded amazing. I'm sure you heard about it. I mean, it was literally like a who's who of heavy metal and rock. And it's like, I would have loved to have been there. But I think there's an argument that Led Zeppelin laid the foundations for heavy metal. Because some of their songs pushed heavy in a time when no one was doing that, and they were really heavy for the time.
No, I agree. I think Sabbath were the ones that kind of took it into that space of like,
I think Sabbath
the
defined
darkness as well, the kind of like heavy doom, the religious connections.
I think they made it into something.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel Led Zeppelin were kind of the explorers.
I agree. But there were a few. I mean, even I think Helter Skelter by the Beatles is arguably one of the first seeds of heavy metal.
Yeah.
Like that, the riff in that song, the screaming, the intensity.
I mean, God only knows what they would have created if they'd have kept creating music. You know, you can only imagine.
Yeah, I mean, they did. Yeah, they sort of changed everything in a very short period of time. But yeah, Led Zepp, you cannot argue with it. And yeah, absolutely laid the foundations for so much great music.
All right, let's move on to family, love, and kitchen disco.
Oh yeah.
Your relationship with Sophie. I'm only going to speak for myself now because I've seen you guys. I've met you so many times over the years. It's quite inspirational. No, seriously. As someone who's and someone that's I've recently become a father. I've only got one, and then I look at people like you guys, and I think what having one child did and tested my relationship, and I can't help but look at you guys and think, shit, that's an achievement. That's a massive achievement in itself.
I think what you're saying though there is very insightful, because I think that it's very, because I can see it's very like from the outside, you see us coming in with our kids, and we do have a incredibly happy, blessed life, but it is something that comes through work and through perseverance and through hard times. And there's no version of life without that. There's no version of a marriage without that. And we've had our moments we've had to work through. That sort of idyllic version of a life or a marriage isn't real. But I think that, yeah, we have, through our jobs and through finding kind of, I think prioritizing our relationship would be one of the big things I'd say. And also just trying to remember to be kind to each other. It's like one of the
That's difficult.
It is, because when you've got the pressures of kids, no sleep, and working together, which we do again now. I mean, when we started dating, one thing I would say is that I didn't work with Sophie for a decade. I felt like it was very important that in the early part of our relationship that we had our own thing, so that when we were together, it was that. I could just feel the pressure of her being my boss when we were 25 years old, And it was a tricky one because going on the road with her was also amazing, and it's how we met. And I had to kind of go, no, someone else does that bit, I'm going to do my bit. And that, there's a huge reason why the feeling kind of got to where it did at that time, because I just went out like a mad animal trying to get people to listen to our demos and trying to get gigs, and it gave me like a massive amount of drive to do that. But I just felt like I needed to find my path. And then 3-4 kids later, and also, but mainly, there was a point when Sophie wanted to make a different kind of record that was self-funded. It was a folk record. It was written with one of my best friends, Ed Harcourt, and one of her, all mates came together to make it happen. And that's when we started working together again, because it was for the right artistic reasons. It wasn't for being motivated by any other reason. And then we started going on the road again together, and it was just glorious, because then I was like enjoying it, but without it, that pressure kind of being over the relationship.
I think that's inspirational. It's incredible, because I think if you would have done it any other way, I'm not sure it would have worked out the same way.
I doubt it would. And I'd seen it with other relationships that had formed in that way, because it's very common for people in bands or lead singers, solo artists to end up dating band members. It's very common, because it's work. It's where you're meeting.
And you spend so much time together.
And not only are you spending time like with these people, you're kind of in this bubble on the road where you're living on tour buses, and you're sharing in this incredible experience of performing together. And there's something about being on stage with other people that's very bonding. And in that moment, you become like very tight. And it is a bubble, like with a lot of things, as soon as you're outside of it, it pops immediately. But it's a catalyst for relationships, and it often happens. But I'd seen how a lot of them hadn't worked out. And a lot of them hadn't worked out, I'd observed, because they were still touring together. And the fun bit where they got together obviously then led into maybe the domestic bit, where suddenly they're like a bit annoyed or you have an argument, but then you still have to do the gig together. Then it's like the worst of that. So I sort of removed myself,
because I can imagine taking that, if you'd have a row at home, family, and then you've got to go on stage together. I mean, that the thought of that just is awful, man. Because energy, you can't hide that energy.
No, I mean, it obviously created Rumours by Fleetwood Mac, which is one of the great records. So it can be a catalyst for some, but I don't think they enjoyed the shows at that time very much.
Yeah. I'm going to say it again, 5 kids, man. I mean, seriously, one is a handful. I hear people that have got 2 saying 2 is not double 1. It's about 5 times 1. 5, what is 5? I mean...
Well, my experience is I felt like each time is about 50% the difference. Now, I get going from 1 to 2, yes, it's a lot more, but if you just put it down to this, when you have no kids, right, you don't have to deal with any of it. 1 child, everything changes. You're suddenly like, your life as it was is now not that. For good, for better and worse, and there's like so much joy in it, but there's obviously a lot of hard work and difficulty and everything else, responsibility. But you've already kind of got that bit. So when you have another one, it's like, well, I know how to do a nappy now. I know
how to
I
wipe
sort
an
of
arse.
know, I sort of know what needs to be done. But it's still 50%. So 100% is massive, half of that. Now I found that when you go to 3, you're kind of halving it again. 4, halving it again. By the time you have a 5th, it's like barely makes a difference.
Wow.
He's just like, wow. There he is. But I mean, it has made him, Mickey, our 5th, is like terrifyingly independent.
I can imagine.
Because he's just had to fend for himself pretty much. So, we'll see how that goes. But I think, I don't know. It's just kind of what happened to me as well.
During lockdown, that must have been quite crazy as well.
It was mental. It was really, I mean, it was difficult for everyone for different reasons, right? But we at the time, our youngest wasn't even 1. He was a baby. So we had this new baby and all our other kids at home. And then suddenly, certainly in lockdown 1, it was like, okay, schools are shut. You're going to have to homeschool them. And we just
Wow.
couldn't. Just 2 of us at home with 5 kids.
I-
We just went full feral, but also full into like, well, we're just going to live. We're just going to spend time together and, play games and learn through living and hope for the best that they'll catch up.
And that's when Kitchen Disco came about, isn't it?
Yes, I mean that's another pivotal moment, kind of life-changing moment, really. That again came out of what is of all the things that we've done, something that was completely honest and completely natural, which is why I think it connected in the way that it did. It was week 1 of lockdown 1, and most of my creative friends had a kind of impulse to do something creative, whether they'd just want to post a song online or just put something up. It just felt like just want to put something out there that maybe cheers people up a bit or shows the emotion that we're going through. And so Sophie and me were talking about that, and we're like, oh, maybe we could record a song, or I could play guitar and you sing something. And it just, none of that felt really us. It felt like that would be a bit forced. And then it was, I suggested, well, why don't we do the thing that's already here? Our kitchen literally has a smoke machine, disco lights.
As you do.
And that's what's there. So I was like, well, all we need to do is switch it on. You sing along to a few songs, and we'll just put that on Instagram and have a bit of fun. And I remember the first week we did it, it was so lo-fi. It was literally me holding my phone. It sounded appalling because it was just the speakers in the room with the sound of the kids screaming. And we did the thing like half an hour long, and there were lots of people starting to come online. And I remember at the end of it, Sophie literally went, well, that's probably the end of my career, but thank you for watching. She was genuinely like, people are gonna think we're insane. But what happened was the opposite. It became a tonic. The response we got was overwhelmingly positive and connected, and we felt like that's, we were doing something, a performance, I suppose,
and people were connecting,
and people were in their homes, and they were coming back just going, you know what, that really made me smile, that really cheered me up. We had a little dance. And so the next week I went really nerdy on all the tech forums to try and get better audio. And I found on a forum that if you get a Rode camera cable and you stick it into the headphone out from an iPhone, on the old iPhone connection.
Or the phono socket.
Yeah, so it's got a phono out for head. Remember when they had the older ones have the, what do they call the not the USB-C, the Thunderbolt?
Yeah.
So the Thunderbolt to headphone, so if you wanted to plug headphones in, if you stick a Rode mic cable into it, the phone thinks it's a stereo input. There's nothing telling you this or nothing official about it. Because essentially you can plug a mic in, right? So that's what the Rode mic cable does. But I don't know how someone just experimented and figured out it takes a stereo in. So what that meant was I could get a mic running through my laptop, use a bit of my music production knowledge, and
that worked then.
And it worked. And so then we would have the backing tracks running, but the mic would then be going through a bit of compression and reverb and stuff. So I could sit it in a spot. But it also meant what you were then hearing at home was like full quality backing track with Sophie's voice sounding good and without all the screaming of the kids. Because the actual sound in the room was ridiculous. And I think that was the bit where thinking back, I think it really made it work, because what you were then getting was this like very real thing. And bearing in mind, it was just us there. So I had to kind of plug all this stuff in, record a bit as a voice note, test it, unplug it, check it, that it was like not distorting or clipping. But when we went live, it was just live. So I couldn't monitor it or hear it. I just had to hope. But I think that the reason it started to snowball from there was that you were getting this kind of very real, sort of lo-fi, very live image from our house with the truth. Our kids tripping over each other, coming on with silly masks, Sophie just being incredible, which she is, but not everyone has seen her perform or knows that she's actually really quirky and got like an amazing personality. And they might know the sort of pop star video version of her, but the version of her that's like a mum at home doing that. But then when she's singing, she's also amazing at that. So I think that's why it sort of worked. And it was a sort of it was connected to something that we were all going through. And then, so we continued every Friday night doing this, and it became a real tonic for us and a part of our week, kind of planning what songs to do. Sophie would wear different outfits and get made up. The kids would kind of think about what they were going to do, and we'd never tell them they had to do it, but it was really sweet because they'd be like, I'm not going to do it tonight, and then they'd kind of wander in dressed as a bear or something. I'd be like, where did you get that from? And it always had this sort of, I think the other thing was it had the jeopardy of a real liveness, because it was like literally if one of the kids pulled the cable out, it would have stopped. Whereas a lot of things that were being put online as lives at that time weren't really live. They were sort of pretending to be live, pre-recorded, and then posted. There's something visceral about knowing something is happening in real time, that jeopardy. And I would see comments coming up from friends, from family, and like people all over the world just while I was, filming it, just saying how much they were getting something, not just I suppose what music can be for. Like it's just a moment to kind of escape from the reality of the situation and feel fun and joy
at a time when reality was so horrible.
And then it kind of went on, and we did it for the 10 weeks of that lockdown. And the guy that was working with us at the time on our online, he did an analysis and found the reach was I think over 35 million.
Wow.
From my iPhone. With no one between, no one was asking us to do it. We got offered corporate sponsorship. We got offered people saying we should put it behind a paywall. That all kind of, as it was getting bigger. I mean, I remember when they put a clip up on Newsnight one of the weeks. I was like, how is this Newsnight worthy? That's like serious.
I mean, on the flip side, did you ever feel any vulnerability in sharing your home life so publicly?
No, that's a really good point, because actually we're actually very private about our private lives and our kids, and we don't post their faces on our social media or any of those things. But during that time, it just felt different. It felt like, actually, we just want to feel a connection, and we want to invite people in quite a kind of honest way, really. It was possibly a little naive, but we were getting so much positivity back from it, I suppose, that it just drove us forward, and it really helped us get through the whole thing, to be honest. And then it opened like crazy doors, and coming out the other side of it, we ended up touring.
Yeah, so Sophie's career booming again afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, it was the kind of beginning of that happening, and we, the first thing we did is we did a tour where we built a set of the kitchen, and and that was the biggest tour Sophie had done at that point, and that was incredibly emotional, because that was the first time we'd played live shows coming out of lockdown, or coming out of the pandemic. And there was one really moving message I got from this. It was a group of 7 women who every Friday night used to tune in their separate houses, and they'd get dressed up and they'd make a cocktail and they'd watch it, and they'd be on Zoom and they'd all have a dance. And it was just the thing they did together. This was just going on all around the world with people. And so when the tour went on sale, they're like, we have to go to that. So they obviously all went to one show together. And they said, as soon as the show started, we had a kabuki drop, and it dropped, and it just revealed a giant version of our kitchen with Sophie on this massive plastic horse. And they said they just all burst into tears.
Aww.
They just felt like the connection between that and now where they were being actually together in this, which I found very moving, and it's very, quite surreal, really.
I can imagine. Right, moving on to a different area, completely different area. You're a pilot. When did that happen, and how did that? Why? When? Where?
Well, yeah. Now we're talking pilot time. Don't get me started. when I was a kid, before music completely took me over as a teenager, being a pilot was what I wanted to do. I was like full Top Gun, and I love Top Gun.
Yeah.
Top Gun's one of my favorite films, and it I just I was really into it. I used to make Airfix models, proper nerdy. Music took over, and but it was always kind of there. And I tell you, it's quite a strange one, really. But in my, when was it, like mid to late 20s, a friend of ours had a stag party. Bear with me here, and we went on a golf weekend, and I got obsessed. I was so. I had one of like a first round of golf, and I had a couple of fluky holes. I parred a hole that fluked it, and I was just like, "This is amazing!" I just got the bug. I started going to Duke's Meadow, down in Chiswick. Got lessons, got the little white glove, got all the stuff, and Sophie was just like, "This is really uncool." She's just like, "You're not even 30, and you're wearing all this sculpt. You do sculpt." I was like, "I don't care. I love it." So for my 30th birthday, she gave me a card, and I opened it up, and in it said, "If you're going to bugger off and do a hobby for several hours of a day, at least make it a sexy one. Here's some flying lessons." And that was her plan. And she got me 5 flying lessons for my 30th. I went and did them, and then flying just took over. And then I signed up to the rest of the course. I got a license, and I think it was her who carried the golf clubs into the attic herself and put them away.
So it was actually a bribe to stop you from playing golf.
Yep. That's what did it. That's what got me into
So
it.
you can't be a rock star and a golfer.
I mean, it could have backfired in that I could have been flying to the golf courses. But
well, I guess you're in an elite club that actually Bruce Dickinson is also
he's
in.
Another local.
Yeah, I want to get him on.
Have you seen the doc where he flies the band around South America?
No, I haven't.
Flight 666.
Oh no, I haven't.
It's so good because they find a way. Like economically, touring South America is tricky, so they put the whole production, all the crew, everything for the stadium show in a Boeing 747, and he flies it.
Yeah.
And flies them in, and then he'll change out of his captain's outfit and then run out on stage.
What is the difference in terms of skill and practicality between the skills that a pilot needs from small plane to kind of passenger jet? Like,
well, every pilot starts on the little single prop.
Yeah.
And that's the beginning, and the principles are the same. It's just one engine becomes 2 engines, so you're dealing with 2 engines, and you're flying different rules, instrument flight rules. When you're flying commercially, and a commercial pilot's license is a lot more involved. But effectively, the actual flying of the thing is it's the same. It's the same controls. But yeah, I love it. I found for me it was actually incredible for my mental health. When I go flying, I find that I think I say I would because I think I wasn't aware of it until I couldn't do it. We'll come back to that. There's another pandemic thing, but flying is a very similar thing to me to what I get out of performing music, where you get into a state of doing, you get into a state of being completely present, because you can't do it thinking about other crap. There's too much going on. But it's also beautiful, and it's surreal, and it's performative. You're not performing to an audience. The stakes are much higher. It's not like if I make a mistake, I'm going to be embarrassed. It's a little bit more can go wrong than that when you're in the sky. But effectively, it's the same thing. And I remember the first solo, which you do as part of your training. And any pilot can tell you this, whether they're like me, flying around little private pilot, or they're fly fighter jets. Every pilot can remember their first solo completely crystallized. And that's the moment when you first take off on your own, no one next to you. And all you do is you do a circuit around the airfield and you land again. And you routine this with your instructor again and again and again and again until at some point they just go, right, I'm getting out, as part of the training. And I remember the moment my instructor got out and I took off for the runway and I realized I was on my own, was almost the same feeling I had when I played the Diana tribute concert at Wembley Stadium with The Feeling, which is an incredible career highlight. We were playing at Wembley Stadium with only maybe a year after our album had come out. So a year ago, we'd been playing in bars to next to no one. And then suddenly we're playing at Wembley Stadium. And as we're walking on, the producer taps me on the shoulder and says, "We've just had word. This is currently the biggest live audience in history watching this.
Wow.
Over 1 billion people around the world are watching this. And not to mention there's 90 or 85,000, whatever,
Right in front of
you. And that went in, and I remember this feeling of like sudden like adrenaline and everything, and then walking out on stage. But then as soon as we started playing, I was like, oh no, I know this song. This is a song I've played hundreds of times.
You went to that flow state, I was saying.
And the first solo was this closest thing that I've ever experienced to that moment of, oh, hang on a minute, this is real. This is really happening, to the realization of, oh, I know what I'm doing. I just did. I can do this. And then into that flow state. And then when you come down to land and realize that you've actually done that on your own, that's the moment you kind of become a pilot, really. The level of elation, relief, emotions, similar to coming off stage like that. So I think it very much taps into that same kind of thing that performing music does for me. And what I realized during the pandemic, when I couldn't do this for nearly 2 years, and flying was the same. You couldn't fly anywhere, not in private planes. I'd lost my outlet. I'd lost the thing that was giving me that sort of mental health cure that was sort of resetting me. And it actually sent me to a pretty dark place. I woke up one night, I think it was like a year into the pandemic, with screaming tinnitus in my left ear, having not been around loud music. So it was terrifying. In what I do as a musician, I'd experienced tinnitus. I don't know if you've ever had that when you come back from a gig.
I've had it bad for long periods. I've had it for...
Yeah, so you know how annoying it can be. And I'd certainly had it from cause and effect many times, where you come back from a club, it's the worst. And it's your hearing's dulled and you hit it, but you kind of know that's what you've done and you feel annoyed with yourself. And so I started wearing earplugs quite young. So I kind of really tried to look after my ears. You get molded ones now, so they fit in and they have filters so you can really still hear the music properly, which are amazing. So this kind of came as a complete shock, and it terrified me, and it didn't stop. And I went to see an ENT that day, who did a test and basically said, well, you've likely damaged your hearing. Don't know how. I mean, there were links at the time to long COVID and tinnitus and all of these things. But that's what's happened, and it's probably just going to be permanent. You're going to have to deal with it. And it sent me into an anxiety spiral. Because it went from days into like a couple of weeks, and it was just still there, and it was loud enough to distract me, like even in a quiet room. But certainly at night, I was putting on white noise and all these kind of things, just trying to find a way to drown it out, and going down wormholes on forums trying to figure out an answer. But then I was very, very fortunate. A friend of mine, an old friend of Sophie's, who's a musician called Mara Carlisle, they were together, and Sophie told her what I was going through, and she said, oh, I had a friend have that exact thing happen. It's actually a professor who his was caused by damage. An alarm went off right by his ear in hospital, and then it was like instant tinnitus, and it drove him pretty mad.
It can drive you crazy.
It sent him to a dark place, which is what was happening with me. And he'd been to see this incredible professor of audiology called Linda Luxon, who sadly passed away now. But I was lucky enough to get an appointment with her, go and see her, and she's been doing this for 40 years, and she'd been dealing with people with chronic tinnitus. She was so kind, and she was so understanding and an expert. And she said, look, there's what is, there's a lot of things that GPs have to deal with. And the general thing we're told with tinnitus is it can be caused by hearing damage and it's permanent. And here's a few ways to get used to it. But her experience over these years had taught her, actually, she had seen as many people suffering from tinnitus who had no hearing damage as she had seen people with hearing damage who had no tinnitus.
Yeah.
So she's like, it's not necessarily the truth, but what she had learned is that it was completely linked to anxiety, and the suffering was linked to anxiety entirely. So she said, first thing we need to do is actually test you properly, not just a kind of rudimental kind of hearing test, so I can be the doctor about this and be scientific. And so I went into a place where they put electrodes all over my head, and it was a very thorough test, a couple of hours. And I went back to see her, and she said, look, the good news is your hearing's fine. She's like, you have a little bit of damage here and there, but your hearing isn't going, because there's a very clear drop off in top end when you're losing your hearing. And which was a massive relief. She's just like, you're not, and actually for your age and what you do, your hearing's very good. So she said, so the reason you're suffering here is actually probably because you have an anxiety issue. So she put me referred me to a clinical psychologist who I work with for the next 3 to 6 months. And it was in the process of that therapy where he unpicked how this anxiety was creating this level of suffering that made me realize, actually, I had things in my life that were breaking these cycles, and it was music and it was flying. That was my mindful moments. And part of his treatment, he put me on an 8-week mindfulness course, because his whole approach to the therapy was very much like understanding that, being alive, you're going to experience pain. It's inevitable, whether that's through loss or through physical pain or whatever that is. But suffering is something you can actually manage. It's it comes from the cornerstones of the Buddhist way of thinking. And what they'd found is that through mindfulness, it just creates a space where you're in the present moment and everything else washes away. It doesn't change anything. And by trying to change the situation, which is what I had been doing, by trying to drown out the sound, by trying to find a pill, trying to find an answer, trying to find something just to stop it, I felt like if I stop it, everything's going to be fine. My life's going to be great.
You weren't understanding the cause.
No. But in this approach through mindfulness is actually understanding that perfect version of yourself and your life is an illusion. And what we are is just what we are, nothing more, nothing less. And when you sit with that, your body and your mind and everything just calms. It's just, I didn't realize it wasn't, I guess the approach for me, because I was raised in a religious way, I was always kind of put off by things that had kind of any sort of incense and anything that had a connotation to like religion or ceremony would be like, I don't like
formats.
that.
You didn't want religious formats.
No, that would always make me suspicious.
Yeah.
It made me feel like, hang on, you're just trying to sell me something, or this is like woo-woo. But this was done by a doctor. It was a clinically trialed course, but the things in it were the same. So 1 week was yoga. It was literally, I'd done a bit of yoga and I continue to, and you're just doing yoga moves, but in a guided, mindful way, getting into your body, feeling everything, feeling the connection. And it was incredible. And what happened was actually the sound almost vanished, and it's not gone. I can hear it now if I think about it, but because I'm now at peace with it, my brain and it's the amygdala, the fight or flight part of your brain, isn't panicking. And that's why it was so loud, is because it was going into panic mode. And in panic mode, it's going, what's that? and it's literally amplifying it.
Mm-hmm.
But it took me that experience to understand what I was getting from these things that were already in my life, and also recognizing that, the power of you just have to try to just take in things in the moment that they're happening. Like, what is real is you and me talking.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. Obviously, there's things to do later. There's things we did earlier, but in this moment, this is it.
Yeah. But then this will soon be a memory.
It will, but then we'll be, but my point is that if you just be in the moment that you're in, it's very good for you.
Look, I completely agree with you. I think it's actually, what you're saying is so simple, but it's so extremely difficult to achieve.
It really is. And you can do it, but I think that you might have it when you make a coffee. Like, there are things in your life that you may do that give you that you don't even realize.
Not from making coffee.
You're like, not that.
I did get the same from music. I did get the same from music.
Maybe even like when you're out with your dog, like when you're just I found like a big thing for me was the kids, especially Mickey when he was a baby. I just realized that if I spend a bit of time with him, it's like, this is how we're born. We're born there. He's there. They're living in the present. They're not thinking about what's going on tomorrow, trying to work out complex problems. They're just like, oh, what's that? A leaf.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you spend time with them,
it's amazing.
It's like, oh, you're living in this like thing that we kind of lose.
Like,
and it's not all bad. We have to use our brains to build coffee shops and learn how to play music and all those things.
But we also have to remember the basics.
Yeah, you have to.
And I think having a child is just amazing. Like, as you just said, I love to just sit with my daughter in a room. She can't even talk yet. She says words, but the communication is so much fun, and the smiling and the laughter, and everything's just, so pure. It's beautiful.
And really, I bet in those moments you're suddenly not aware of anything else.
Yeah.
You're suddenly just there.
Yeah.
You're present, and that's what I find incredibly helpful in everything else that you do. Then when you come back to, say, your business or the work that you need to do, you're coming at it with a sense of clarity that's not clouded by anxiety.
Yeah.
So, because it's being creative, but also just running a shop or whatever it is you're doing. If you're anxious and agitated, it makes it very hard to make those decisions and make those plans.
It does. And I suffer a lot from anxiety, and I do find it difficult. But I mean, sometimes in the business world, you just got to plow on through. And sometimes when you can, I agree with you. You want to seek those moments of peace and clarity. But there are times when you have anxiety when you can't, and you just got to plow on through.
Part of the process for me was learning that sometimes it is actually the best thing to do is do nothing. It's just to accept this is just how it is right now, but know that it will pass. It's like, when you were asking me about my life and my family and my children, you see, as you said, from the outside, we come in with my pop star wife, my kids, and my pilot's license, and my Instagram. It looks idyllic, but I tell you, every one of us has stuff that they're going through and they're dealing with and they're working through, including myself. And
I can completely relate to your journey, because I've had the same. I've gone through exactly the same journey. Different symptoms. Mine were labyrinthitis and migraines.
Right. Yeah.
But I went that whole route, the medical route, and then coming to a realization that actually there's something emotional underneath this, and that has been the long, slow path to getting through it. But that's why I can relate 100% to what you just explained, because I feel I've done that exact journey for different reasons. Well, essentially for the same reasons, but for different.
Yeah, it's like you had a different kind of symptom.
Yeah, exactly.
Presenting.
Exactly.
But for the same reasons.
Boxing.
Yeah. That's another mindful thing. I love it. And that is another thing that I couldn't do when I went mad and lost my mind.
Yeah.
And when I started getting an ex-pro friend of mine, Daniel, who's
the guy that I came to train with.
Yes, yeah, and he started. It was during that time that I started to get him to come over to the garden.
Yeah,
and I did a session today
nice
with him. I
Nice.
love it. It's such a good release.
Yeah,
And it's another thing. Like, you can get it from sport, any sport that you enjoy, really, that when you're doing that thing, you're just doing it.
yeah.
You're just in the moment, you're in the present moment, and everything else falls out.
Did you watch the Usyk Dubois fight?
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I mean, Usyk's just a monster.
I just think I think it's the best I've ever seen him.
It's incredible. You can't really argue with it. It's just an incredible boxer. There's nothing.
I mean, cruiserweight, and he's also done it in heavyweight, and it's just it's incredible and undefeated.
I know, but you look at him and you just like, you can't. There's no sort of like smoke and mirrors here. It's just, he's the real deal.
I think he's nothing short of the Ali of our generation. You know, he is the master. He is a master of boxing.
That's what I thought on Saturday when you see, seeing a few of his fights, and you're like, okay, this is getting into legendary status.
Absolutely.
Now.
I mean, there's no one that he hasn't taken on now. He's done Joshua, Dubois twice, Fury twice. Who else has he got to prove anything?
What else do you need? Now it's just victory laps, isn't it? From now on. You still doing it yourself?
No, I've stopped, man. I've struggled for the time, to be honest.
Yeah.
With the little baby and small business.
Well, I would say, firstly, you're always welcome to come and bash around.
Thanks.
But I genuinely think you should make the time for these things.
Yeah.
I think for your own, I think your mental health, you see benefits across everything in your life when you make space for these things.
I've definitely put my physical health in the back burner to prioritize work and child. I'm not saying that's the right thing or the wrong thing to do. I just think temporarily it has been the thing to do.
Yeah, there's a practical side to that.
Do I want to get back to a bit of meat? Yeah, I do. Just right now it's really difficult.
No, I get that. But come over, make time.
Yeah.
You can do it. It's 1 hour.
I know.
And
or even get on a skipping rope.
You know how much better you'll feel.
I know.
For it.
I know.
It's just
I know.
It's visceral, isn't it?
Yeah. But as I said, even just a skipping rope, just to get skipping again. What legacy would you like to leave as a father?
Oh, wow. God, that's quite a question, isn't it? It's a good question. I guess all I want for my kids is them to be, I mean, it's kind of obvious to say it, but I want them to find something in their life that brings them the same level of kind of happiness and stability. And it's a really tricky thing, because there's the things that finding something that you can do as a job that you're passionate about. And it doesn't matter what that is. That might be accountancy, or it might be being a lawyer, it might be making coffee. It's not about it being glamorous or forget fame. That's something that I think is like proven to be generally very, very bad for people. But with that, you need to have independence. And I think that that's the thing, like, I'm trying to install in all of them, is that you need to have a work ethic, and you need to find a way to make your own living. And if you can combine the two, that's the dream. But I don't think you can kind of find that like fulfillment and happiness. It's difficult.
I think a lot of people don't. I think you're talking about the combination of fulfillment and financial success.
Yeah, and by financial success, I mean just independence.
But that's what I mean by financial success.
It's not like rich. I mean, you have to be to a level to live in certain parts of the world, but just that would be what I'm hoping for all of them. But in terms of like, if when I'm old they visit me and they look after me for a couple of days, and I think I feel pretty fulfilled.
Do your kids see you as cool, or
No.
do they cringe?
Cringe.
Really?
And I love it.
Do you rub it in?
Yeah, I lean into it, and I think it's good. I think it's healthy. I think there's a natural order when you become a teenager that your parents are cringe.
Yeah.
And I think that is. Look, I think if they were genuinely like ashamed of me, I think it would be a different thing. But what I quite like is because obviously we have a job that to them is our job. They've been coming to festivals and gigs since they were babies. So to them, they sort of see through the curtain, which I didn't when I was a kid. And I still feel excited by it when I'm like, they're letting me in backstage, because that wasn't something I had access to. So I had an idea of that. Our kids have always had that. So they see through that and they see it for what it is, which I think is quite good. It's quite healthy. They don't see that as a magical mystery thing. But that means when they come to our gigs, they're often like rolling their eyes and like, there's nothing cool about your dad on stage. But what I like is if they bring a mate along, the mate is often like, wow, side of stage when you can see a massive crowd and people singing along, having never experienced that. And that's the little glimmer I can see from our kids where they look over and I'm like, you're a bit proud of me, aren't you?
Momentarily.
You're not
hiding it.
You're not going to say it.
They're working hard to hide it. What's the most rock and roll thing you've ever done?
Oh God. All the things that came into my head I cannot say.
We'll leave it at that then. That's fine. We can tell me when the mics are off.
Yeah.
I think it's just a random one I pulled in because I'm going to let you into a little secret. My Instagram feed is actually full of jets and fighter jets. And
stuff nice. Yeah, mine.
Because I'm blown away by them, particularly fighter jets. I'm just like seeing these videos of them just going and then like doing.
I know. I'm a massive nerd for it.
What's your favorite aircraft?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, I have a real romantic connection to the F-14 from Top Gun.
Yeah.
Because it's just the shape of it. And there was a video game called Afterburner in the 80s that had those in. But the thing that I love so much, the aeroplane that I have a share in is a Robin DR400 single prop. It's made of wood. It's got a canopy with incredible viz. You can see almost like a helicopter. You can see over the front of the wings. And I love it. That's the aeroplane that I've flown the most. And it feels like, it's like if you've ever had a car that's like, oh, that's the one. That's the one for me. And it's just it's not valuable in any way. It's probably one of the most, it's like one of the most basic an airplane can be. But
I like that.
I love it.
I was going to say mine's an SR-71. But
really? Interesting. Yeah, so you can analyze personality type.
Yeah. Richard, thank you. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure.
Absolutely fantastic having you on. Oh, these mics in my way. If you like this episode, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel.